We still sometimes hear from church leaders, we don't do social media advertising. And every time I hear it, my heart sinks because I know how many opportunities they're missing to connect with people who are spiritually open but far from church. In a world where digital engagement dominates everyday life, this mindset is quietly sabotaging evangelistic impact. Well, in this episode, I'm going to share a real world story of a pastor evangelist who learned this lesson the hard way, unpack the biblical and cultural reasons why digital outreach matters, and explain why social media advertising must be a core part of today's evangelism strategy. Hey, it's Larry Witzel, and you're listening to another ministry insight from SermonView. This is the podcast where we explore how to grow your church, deepen your impact, and embrace the mission God has placed on your heart. If it's your first time here, welcome. Please subscribe so you don't miss any future episodes. We still sometimes hear from church leaders, we don't do social media advertising. And every time I hear that, I wince because I know that they're missing out on one of the most effective tools we have for reaching spiritually open people who aren't yet connected to a church. Here's why that's a mistake. The average American now spends nearly half their waking hours in the digital space. That's where people are engaging, learning, searching, and it's where they will find your church. Choosing not to advertise on social media today is like choosing not to use microphones in your sanctuary. It's not about being trendy. It's about being strategic in proclaiming the gospel. 3 years ago, we worked with one of my heroes, a seasoned evangelist, someone who used to run multiple campaigns a year before spending time overseas in the mission field. When he came back to the U.S., he asked SermonView to handle his evangelism marketing. But when we told him that social media advertising is now a core part of every campaign, he flat out refused. We're not going to do that. He said, put all the money into direct mail. That might have been the right answer in 2007, but this was 2022. Well, we pushed back, encouraging him to carve out even a small portion of the budget for social media, but he wouldn't budge. He even used artwork that he had commissioned 20 years earlier, something completely out of touch with today's aesthetic and digital culture. Well, as you can imagine, the campaign bombed. Response was nearly non-existent. Honestly, we thought that would be the last time we'd hear from him. But 2 years later, he came back. And this time, he went big on social media advertising. And the results were radically different. Strong engagement, excellent attendance, and new connections with people who had never heard of his church before. See, social media is the new town square. According to Pew Research, nearly 70% of Americans are on Facebook regularly, including older adults who traditionally respond to mail. If your church is not present there, you simply don't exist for many in your community. And that's not just a practical issue, it's a spiritual one. Jesus said, "You're the light of the world, like a city on a hilltop that cannot be hidden." If we're serious about evangelism, we can't hide our light under a bushel or behind outdated methods. And let me give you a word of caution from Proverbs 18:13. Spouting off before listening to the facts is both shameful and foolish. We need to pay attention to the cultural context that we're working in. We need to understand where people are and how they communicate before deciding how to reach them. The gospel hasn't changed, but our methods must. If we want to reach people, we have to go where they are, and today, half the time, they're online. So if you've said, we don't do social media advertising, I want to challenge you to rethink that. This isn't about following trends. It's about faithful stewardship, using every tool that God has given us to proclaim His message of hope. Social media advertising is no longer optional. It has to be a core part of your evangelism marketing strategy. So some churches still say, we don't do social media advertising. But today, the average American spends nearly half their waking hours in the digital space. If your church isn't visible online, then for many people, you simply don't exist. Jesus said, let your light shine. And in today's world, that means showing up on Facebook and Instagram and beyond. The gospel hasn't changed, but our methods need to. Social media advertising is no longer optional. It's a core part of effective evangelism marketing. If this episode challenged your thinking, would you take a moment to subscribe and share it with another pastor or evangelist? Let's expand the conversation and equip more churches to embrace the tools that God has given us. Your church website isn't just an online presence. When done correctly, your website can be an evangelism engine that supports kingdom growth in your community. If you'd like to learn about 3 website features that strongly correlated with church growth, don't miss the previous episode of Ministry Insights from SermonView. Pastor, your faithfulness matters more than you know. You are a light in your community. Yeah, sometimes flickering, sometimes blazing, but always present. Even when it feels like no one's watching, God sees your heart. He's using your ministry in ways that you can't always measure. So keep planting seeds, keep showing up, because God is doing something special through your faithfulness. I love you guys. I'm cheering for you. We'll see you next time.